Well, hi again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football, and this is the Sports Page with Bob Case. And today, Bob has a very special guest, someone you should all know and recognize, Reggie Jackson, 21 years in the majors. He's a 5-time World Series champion, 14-time All-Star, and a friend of Bob Case's. And Bob, when we get a chance to visit with some of your friends, and they just so happen to be baseball legends, the combination of the two really makes for an interesting show. Thank you first and foremost for inviting Reggie, and for him, obviously, for accepting the invitation. Bob, go ahead.
Thanks, Harper. And Reggie, we're so honored to have you on the show. And it's just been great to know and follow your career, from all the great things you did. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on, 563 home runs. And one of my favorite memories of you is hitting that ball in the World Series in the All-Star game off Doc Ellis. I can shut my eyes and see that ball, and it was going up like this when it hit the light standard. It wasn't on the way down; it was going up. I'll never forget that. But there's so many things you've done in your great, wonderful career, and you've had a great afterlife after your career, and I'm so honored. I got to tell you this funny story. Reggie has a guy, the mob guys used to say to me, more important than a degree from Harvard is know before whom you stand. And Reggie has a guy, Joe Porter, who's been with him and best friends for 40 years, who's got his back. And I've always said, it's so important for somebody, especially a rock star like Reggie or anybody, to have, they have a million friends and acquaintances, but to have one person that you can rely on and trust, to me, is so great. And Reggie was so nice to get us. How about this? A great honor. He got us tickets to the Yankee 18-2 win over the Dodgers, beat them 18-2. And you don't think I've had fun telling my friends? They say, "Where'd you get those great tickets to the game?" And I say, "Oh, Mr. October got them for me." And they go, "What?" I've had more fun saying that. But anyway, Reggie, I want to thank you for the tickets and for the friendship. And, I've just had so many great memories of you. Frank Szczesnek, the Polish equipment guy, introduced me to you when you were young. And this I want to say, when Reggie was like in his second year or third year, he started out in Kansas City and then came to Oakland. I met him in Anaheim Stadium, and I remember just meeting him. And I always said he had a brashness about him. He acted like he belonged in the big leagues when he was a rookie. Usually rookies are nervous and scared, and do I belong here? Reggie always had that. And that's why I've always said Reggie and Muhammad Ali, who I worked with, two guys that are very similar, because that brashness made them both great. I always said that Ali had the same thing, more and four and this and that brashness, and Reggie had the same thing, and I can't wait to hear all the stories that Reggie will tell. And, and he just had so many, all I can say is this: Irv Norn, who was a friend of mine my whole life and played for Casey, was his coach. And Irv bragged about him and said, when I tell you what the players say, I mean, Darrell Evans says he's never seen anybody, and Darrell played with Hank Aaron, and never seen anybody like Reggie. So that's all I got to tell you. So Reggie, I want to hear you talk, and it's so good to see you and know you're healthy, you're doing good. And I love hearing about all your cars and your life today up there in the beautiful Monterey. I was telling Joe yesterday, where you live is the 17-mile drive. 17-mile drive is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. And to Monterey, Carmel, and you're up there in heaven. So anyway, I'd love to hear.
Well, I hope I can get to heaven. That's for sure. But
you will.
I just would say, Bob, I'm really grateful for the life I've been able to live, and then of course the health I've got, which is the most important thing that you have. I wear a hat that says grateful, and I've had many more compliments on this hat than when I wear a New York Yankee hat that's game used in the World Series. I get more compliments on this hat than any, and it's nice to see that people, have respect for the world of our God, and to be thankful to Him. And so when people say that, I know that they're respectful of our Maker, and our person that we worship and give thanks to. which is our Lord that blesses us with good health and good relationships and good people and friends. And so I've been really very, very fortunate to have several best friends. Just I'm probably the best friend of 8 or 10 guys, and all very special people. Um, and I mean, I can name them all, but I don't want to leave anybody out. But even my oldest brother Joe is one of my best friends. My nephew, who's 61 years old, is one of my best friends, and I have a sister. Um, she's in her 70s. She's one of my best friends, and so it's really neat. It's really nice, having so many people and friends that are your besties. Um, from Dr. J to Franco Harris. Joe Green called yesterday, and these got Joe Montana. Um, it's just nice having such wonderful people as a best friend.
As you get older, I think the appreciation of that versus when you're younger and you don't know whether somebody's interested in you because of what you do or how much you make, having to filter all of that out, that's not easy for a young man or even an old man to do. But you obviously have been able to do so in a manner where it's not only family, but others that are close attachments that you're connected to still now. And obviously, baseball will be a part of that. That's part of what it is. But for you to be able to filter that, that's a certain characteristic that you want to get it right, don't you? You need God's blessings in order to be able to filter who's going to be the person that you can trust and tell you the truth in ways that some people won't if they're just looking to fall or see a fallen dollar out of your pocket.
Yeah, I really feel like I've been blessed um, with an innate ability or knowledge or blessing from God to be able to sense good people when I'm with them. And so I was put on this journey by God to be involved with the public, quite a bit. Um, and so I honestly feel like He gave me the ability to have a good sense when you're around good people and to be able to trust the right people. And I haven't been perfect with it, but certainly, I've been very fortunate, 90 some percent of the time to gravitate toward good quality people. And I do believe that, God was involved in directing me with the group of people that I hung around, enjoyed, learned from, got help from in life. So I feel, very blessed and grateful.
Yeah, discernment's such an important part of that, Reggie. I appreciate you mentioning that. And you talked a little bit earlier about health and all that. I have to ask, when you were a youngster, you're in high school, Cheltenham High, and you're playing football, you get injured, you come back at the end of the season, your junior year, and you break 5 bones, if I'm not mistaken, in your neck, and you're told by all these doctors that you're never going to get a chance to even walk, let alone play. There's a certain toughness, but also you mentioned the blessing. Can you talk a little bit about your ability to be able to survive the fractures the way that you did, to where you not only played, but you excelled in everything where most people would have fallen apart physically?
Yeah, well, I wasn't threatened with not being able to walk, but I certainly had questions whether I was going to be able to play sports again, play
Okay.
football especially. But you know, um, at that time, the science and the medicine was not as good, but certainly I healed, and I had cervical vertebrae fractured, and they did heal, and it didn't take that long. I was young, and the fractures healed in something like 6 weeks, and I was off to the races again. I don't think I missed a basketball season. Football was right there, and then the basketball started. And I think I was right in there, and then went right into the baseball season too. So I think I was pretty fortunate, by healing the fractures in the cervical region of my neck.
Did you play a lot of stickball or street hockey when you were growing up? It seems like you did everything: football, basketball. You mentioned baseball there, of course, in high school. You ran track. Uh, did you not bowl? Everything. I mean, what was Reggie Jackson as a young kid struggling to do? Racquetball. Could you do everything well enough to where you go, I got this too. I got it.
Pretty much. There was some of the games that you didn't learn. You didn't learn golf because at that time black people were not allowed on golf courses, so you couldn't really learn to play golf. And I'm kind of sorry for that because I do enjoy a good game of golf now. But you couldn't play golf back in that era. You weren't allowed. You could caddy. That's about all. You couldn't join a club. But I didn't play much hockey because you couldn't buy the equipment. It was too expensive.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, very expensive.
And I do think that one of the most fascinating things I see is how the pro hockey players can ski backwards at full speed. And it's a wonderful. I just kind of enjoy seeing that up close and personal. Really, how these guys move when they're on the ice, I think it's really impressive. But the other sports, whether it was hand-eye coordination or whether it was football, baseball, basketball, track, I kind of specialized in those four because you could do both basketball and football at the same time. You could do track and baseball at the same time. And so those were kind of natural, but I enjoyed them, and I was very thankful to participate in all the sports. And we played sports during the season. The basketball season, you played basketball. The football season, you played football, and likewise with track and baseball. So
you didn't hit. You didn't go to a batting cage during the fall, right? You're playing football.
No.
You didn't have a bat, did you?
Yeah, I think it's so much better to play 2 or 3 sports than to just play one year round. We never had injuries with different muscle areas because that's all you were working was your arm. If you were a pitcher, your arms and your legs and your back, etc. When you're a pitcher, and when you're doing football, you have other muscles. You're doing basketball, you have other muscles, and I just think we were a little bit more well-rounded. Maybe we didn't get as good as some of the players do today, but I think that I can name some guys that played pretty good and just played baseball during the season. Mickey Mantle, I think he played high school football, but he didn't have to play baseball year-round to be great.
Yeah, and he lived on a farm and was baling hay out in wheat fields to get stronger than most people ever do. Your strength, was there a lot of weight training for you, or is it just something you were naturally doing, but because you were always working out or getting ready for one sport to another, was that more of an asset for you, or was it getting underneath the bench press and kind of pressing weights in high school?
It was more of getting in shape for the next sport. And you didn't have weight training class. I didn't have weight training class until I got to college.
Okay, wow.
We had a pull-up bar in my house. My brother put in a pull-up bar, and that was about right in your bedroom. You took the door off, and then you put up a pull-up bar.
Yeah.
And so my brother had put that in there for me to build some strength. And that was really about it. The weight training and all that stuff didn't really come until I went to Arizona State and in college.
Well, speaking of which, talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, was there a specific coach another player? When did Reggie Jackson know that my chance of playing football at the college level is not only genuine, but people are watching me now? I'm going to have to turn it on here a little bit, because you had Oklahoma, you had Alabama, you had the University of Georgia, all interested in watching you play.
I didn't really focus so much on trying to impress the colleges. I did want to go to college, and I would have had to have gone to college on a scholarship because the family couldn't afford it. And I could have gone to Temple and played.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I had conversations with Bill Cosby because he was either there or an alumni. I think he's a little older than I am. But I did have conversations with them, and I remember them saying, "We'll take the whole backfield if you come. We'll give all three other guys a scholarship." You know, and that time you had a T formation. You had two halfbacks and a fullback and a quarterback.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, I was just really grateful for you know, the opportunity to play the sport, and you didn't really think about colleges outside of where you lived. When we watched college football, you watched the Rose Bowl, and the sun was shining, and it was 7:30 at home, and it was dark outside, and so
Cold.
that's kind of that kind of thinking nowadays it doesn't even exist. But when we sat down to the TV to watch the Rose Bowl, it was light out and it was dark where we were. I mean, so you know, going back that far, you know, just to let you know what the thought processes were like was, you know, it's just very, very different.
Absolutely, and it was warm too. You're going, oh, California? Are you kidding me? It must be amazing. It's 2 o'clock. The game's just about ready to kick off. It's freezing cold. I got to go take the trash out. I need to get a jacket on, but you know, to come back inside and watch a game. Were there any childhood heroes that really sparked you back from the late '50s or early '60s when you were in high school?
Yeah, it's just the same people. You know, there was the top quarterback was Johnny Unitas. And then, of course, you paid attention to Jim Brown. Um, you paid attention to Otto Graham was a little bit older, but you followed Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell. You know, those were the guys that you followed. Um, you know, and then in track and field, you know, it was the sprinters, Adolph Plummer and Euless Williams and those guys. I forget the guy that was the pole vault champion, Bob something. He's on
Bob Gutowski.
On the cover of Wheaties, you know.
Yeah.
You know, so, but, you know, when you followed the great Bobby Hall and those guys like that back in the day in hockey, you know, gosh, I can't even think of Smith. With the tennis, the great tennis player
Stan Smith, yes.
Stan Smith, he had the first pair of Adidas shoes, and
He
all
did, yes.
But it was fun, enjoyable, and you know, the coaches. My high school coach was from Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania, and he was friends with a guy named Frank Cush, who was from Pennsylvania, but he was the high school coach for college coach, I'm sorry, for Arizona State University. And he recommended me to Frank Cush. And Frank Cush gave me a scholarship, and I went out there and played offense and defense. I started as a safety on defense as a sophomore, and you couldn't play as a freshman. And then I played baseball. If I could hold a 3.2 grade point average, I could play two sports. And so that's how I got to play baseball. I went out and threw it to a practice one day with Bobby Winkles, the baseball coach there. And he said, "Boy, Reggie," he said, "why don't you come out for our team?" And I said, "Well, I'll come out one day and do batting practice or something like that." And he said to me, he said, I've heard of you. The scouts have told me who you are. And you're the best high school player in the nation. He said, so come on out anytime. So I went out one day, and I bet one of my roommates in the Saguaro dorm over there. And he said, you can't make the team because, I don't think you're going to make team. They've never had a black player there.
Wow.
And our coach is from Arkansas. And I looked at the guy and said, well, I don't know about all that, but I know that I can play baseball on the baseball team if I get a chance or if I want to. And I went out and took a little batting practice one day, and I popped a couple up and hit a couple grounders, and I hit 4 or 5 in a row over the trees in right field and center field. And Winkle said, man, Reggie, we're ready for you. Why don't you talk? I'll talk to Frank Kush. And then I had to talk to you had an advisor back at that time, your program that you were taking in school, your curriculum that you were taking. And I had an advisor. The advisor, my student advisor was a gentleman by the name of Bill Kajikawa. He was the freshman football coach. And so I went to him, and he said, well, Reggie, you have a 3.2 average. And he said, that qualifies you for being able to play both sports. He said, you're right on the number. And so that's how I got a chance to play both sports. And I wanted to get out of spring football practice because it was hot.
Hey, Reggie, I want to ask you, I've heard stories about Frank Kush my whole life about the hardest badass practices guys were falling over. Is that true?
Yes. He wanted to toughen me up. So if I went into the line and didn't do a good job, and I was running the ball and I got knocked down or something, he'd look at me and he'd say, well, there you go, Jackson, you're pussyfooting around. He said, we're gonna take the offensive line away. And we're going to line the defense over here, and we're going to hike you the ball, and you're going to run through that defensive line. I said, with no offensive lineman? He said, with no offensive lineman. And he'd do that to me in spring football practice almost at least every other practice. And I'd get smashed, and my helmet would be on crooked, my nose would be bleeding. I'd have to fix my shoulder pads. They were all, and if any player on defense took it easy on me, he would make them do what I was doing, take the ball. And so they had to really smash me. And at that time, one of the guys on the defense was a Hall of Fame future All-Pro, a guy by the name of Curly Culp.
Oh, yeah.
And Curly was my roommate there for a while. And so, man, I went through those things, and he said he was toughening me up.
Man, it must be tough going back into your dorm room after getting a bite to eat and resting before your next practice. Going, Curly, what are you doing? He goes, I don't want him yelling at me. What do you think? What am I doing? Right?
Yeah. I remember Curly got, it was called Bull in the Ring. He got Bull in the Ring once, and he was the NCAA heavyweight wrestling champ as a freshman.
Oh boy.
And he had to go Bull in the Ring with Frank's drill. And the first guy, he broke their helmet. The next guy smashed in his face mask. And the next guy, he knocked his helmet off with the chin strap and all that coming apart. And Kush stopped the drill. He stopped the drill because Curly was killing people. He was going to kill somebody.
Yeah. And he was ruining all the good equipment. You had to go, your equipment man probably, yeah. Bob, you'd be really upset about something like that, wouldn't you?
He played in the first Super Bowl, I believe, with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Sure did.
Yeah.
And they won number 4. Yeah, absolutely. Reggie, today, it would be silly to think that freshmen couldn't play. But it gave you a chance to learn the campus a little bit and know where where your academic advisors were and which building you needed to be in, and to learn how to study and get your work done so that you could play. Was there a benefit aside from that, or was it something, I'm ready to play as a freshman, I know I am, this rule shouldn't exist, and it's another decade before freshmen were able to play?
Yeah, not at all. There was no discussion about that. That's the way the rules were set, and they figured you were a little immature in order to go into the level of players that were 3, 4 years older than you. And so we never complained about it. And there were several of us on the freshman team that were good enough to play on the varsity, but the rules were the rules, and that's just what it was.
Yeah. What'd you get? About 5 different freshman games, maybe 6. You'll win obviously against the Wildcats and maybe SC or UCLA, right?
We had 5 or 6 games, and most of them were with the junior colleges right around the town. And we had 4 running plays and 4 passing plays. That's right. That's right. And when we got down to the goal line and we got close, we were 5 or 6 yards out, then we would just call a play to where we're going to hand Reggie the ball, and Reggie just grab onto Curly's pants. Curly Culp. He was 6'1", 290.
Right. He was your fullback, right? He was your fullback.
No, he was that defensive lineman. Curly Culp.
Yes, I understand. But then on the play, okay, you just grabbed his pants and follow him.
I just ran behind him.
Yeah.
I just ran behind him, and he just made his way to the end zone, and I came out at the end with the hey, here I am, touchdown.
Yeah, good job, roommate. Yeah, good job. Yeah, both of you did well. After the season is over, when did you visit with Bobby to say, hey, I want to play baseball? And then go ahead.
No, Bobby Winkles told me, he said, Reggie, you're going to be the number one. You have a chance to be the number one draft. You are the best player in college and high school. He said, but you're dating a Mexican girl, and the major leagues are afraid of you dating a Mexican girl and dating out of your race. And so I said, well, my middle name is Martinez and my grandmother is Puerto Rican. I speak Spanish. Does that matter? And I Bobby Winkle said, well, Reggie, that's what they're telling me. He said, you're probably going to be the second pick in the draft. And so I said, okay. And he said, and I'm going to recommend to you that with the money you're going to get, you're probably going to get more money than the first pick. He said, but you're not going to be the first pick because the Mets and a few of the teams think you would be socially disruptive by dating out of your race. And I said, well, when do Mexicans get to be above or below or out of my race or whatever? I said, I don't get that. He said, I understand. And so Bobby Winkle supported me, and he said, I know your family needs the money. You're probably going to get over $100,000. And he said, I'm going to recommend that you leave school and take the money. He says, you can't do it in football. They don't let you leave college and go to the pros. And he said, I understand that you like football better. He said, but you can make it in this sport too. And so I went and signed the contract, and I gave, I got $37,000, $75,000 bonus. And then I had another $25,000 for a car and for finish my college education. And I gave the first 37.5 to my parents. And I was getting the next 37.5 after the first of the year. Mm-hmm.
Tough decision. What were you, 19 years old at the time, or were you just turning 20?
I was right around 19 because I was at the end of my sophomore year. And when I went out there, I was 18. I had graduated from college. May 18th was my birthday, and I graduated from college in June. So I was a month 18, and decided to go to Arizona State. When I got to Arizona State, I was 18, and that next year I turned 19, and then I went on and signed after that.
Well, good thing you had a 3.2 grade point average, Reggie, because you don't have representation at that time. It could have really been easy for someone like Bobby to mislead you, or for somebody else to go, I'm only going to give you 45,000 instead of 75,000. You know what I mean? That thank goodness you were able to keep your wits about you and maximize what you were able to get based on where the tier system was in baseball at that time.
Yeah, my dad took really charge of that. And, when they were talking about getting $100,000 total, then, my dad was comfortable. We were going to get our mortgage paid off and get things cleared up and all that kind of stuff. And it wouldn't be as hard for my dad and mom anymore. So it was the best thing for us to do.
Absolutely. Bob, I know you had a question. Please forgive me.
Reggie, so you actually really liked football more than baseball?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Wow, I never knew. That's interesting. Wow.
Yeah. Well, during that time, there was a lot of racism, and you could express yourself physically on the football field, and it was clear and clean. You could beat up some of the guys that were racist. You could go after them and legally do some damage.
Did you ever consider an HBCU or another, like go to Grambling or Jackson State or any of the other schools, Tennessee?
No, the schools weren't that well known.
Yeah.
And, all I knew was Pennsylvania, and I didn't know anything about California. I was afraid to go to Oklahoma. I was afraid to go to. I could have went to Notre Dame. I was recruited by Ara Parsegian, and I was recruited by Ara Parsegian at Notre Dame, and I was recruited by Bo Schembechler at Michigan, and Joe Paterno at Penn State.
Penn State, sure.
I was recruited to Arkansas and Oklahoma, but I would be the first black player there, and I was afraid to go there. So I just ruled out really anything that I wasn't familiar with. I went to Arizona State because of my high school coach knew the guy there, and so I went there just because it was important to have someone that took a special interest in me. My parents had gotten divorced, and I needed kind of a father image. I was away from home, didn't know, my butt from third base or my head from the goalpost. And so I just needed some help I needed guidance from people that cared. And Bobby Winkles was that guy. Frank Cush was that guy to help me through life.
And we've talked about Bo Jackson or Dion. I played with Brian Jordan here in Atlanta, guys that had dual careers that play at the highest level. I'm not dismissing any of the race issues, but also wasn't Arizona State a favorable because they had a really good baseball program compared to, let's say, what Michigan's was or Notre Dame or Penn State's? It made that decision a little bit easier for you, didn't it?
Yeah. They were in warm weather. They were number one, number two in college baseball. They'd ranked up in the top 5, top 10 all the time.
Yeah.
They had Rick Mundy and Sal Bando. And at the time, the best player in the nation was Rick Mundy.
Well, he was the first player ever selected in the draft. They didn't have it prior to that, but he's a teammate of yours, and you played both with and against him for many years. Obviously, both of you had great careers.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, getting to Arizona State, the warm weather and all that, and then baseball itself, you're hitting a ton out of the ball, right? You hit 5 balls just in warm-ups into the trees. What was favorable for you in terms of your baseball development? Did you have a bunch of really live arms that you went against most of the time? Was there something in particular that just put you at ease at the plate? Did you learn or develop a swing pattern and a plan for yourself when you got into the box every time? How did you develop as a player while you were there?
In those days, you really just played to get better. You played and you practiced to get better, and that's basically what it was for me at Arizona State. We we didn't have a hitting coach. We did have an assistant coach there. Romero Lujan was his name, and he was mostly the pitching coach.
Right.
Bobby Winkles did all of the coaching, and he basically just, threw me batting practice. I got a lot of batting practice, and I practiced a little bit with Bando and Mundy when I was a freshman. But I just really progressed myself, and with my dad, and with the guidance of the coach there, Bobby Winkles, and really the ability just to keep playing and keep working out and play, through the summers that you had plenty of warm weather outside. I just got better and better every time I played. The more you play, the better you're going to get.
And I'm imagining the competition that you're going against. There's scouts all over the place, aren't there? They're watching Bando, they're watching Monday, they're watching you. And then they're looking at some of the opponents. Let's say you play in Fresno or Fullerton or San Diego State or SC or UCLA, some other top programs, and the exposure, and then you doing well, hitting 400 or 500 at that highest level, obviously made it a lot easier for guys to notice and then obviously take note and start putting on pen and paper. All right, what's it going to take to sign this guy? Did you get a chance to visit with any of the scouts or not the recruiters, but these minor league coaches that were interested in, whether it be the Dodgers or the
No, not really, not really.
Okay.
There was one guy that talked to me about being the number one pick. His name was Bob Zuck, Z-U-K.
I knew Bob.
Yeah, he drafted Willie Stargell too, but he knew about Mays and Aaron and McCovey and guys with real power. Frank Howard, and he'd mentioned me in that stuff there, and I was just kind of looking with wide eyes open, and it wasn't really much of a decision to draft me because I had a lot of obvious skills. And there were other few. Rick Mundy was like that. There was a guy named Bob Horner that was like that. And a couple of other. Willie Davis was like that when he was young, just so far above and beyond. Willie Mays was like that when they saw Willie, and I think Willie was recruited at either 15 or 16. Guys, I need to either walk out to the kitchen because there's something going on out there with a bell ringing. Can we pause, or can I take this video with me? I'm a little afraid something might be going on.
Why don't you go take care of that and then come right on back?
Haywire out there. Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, please go right ahead, Reggie.
I'll be back in 30 seconds.
Okay, terrific. And we have a temporary pause, but I'm glad you asked that, because football obviously being such an important part of his life growing up. And I've always been under the impression, I use this for an example, Bob. Tony Gonzalez, Hall of Fame wide receiver, tight end with Kansas City and the Atlanta Falcons, played collegiate basketball.
Berkeley, right?
And he always says that football made me a better basketball player.
No. And
I understand what he meant by that. And basketball made him a better football player. The two of them together were able to do some things from an athletic standpoint. Learning how to get open when you're in the key helped him get open in between two linebackers and a safety in a manner that made it easy for quarterbacks to be able to not only find him, but hit him and catch the ball and get the first down. It was so simple when you think about it from a strategy perspective.
Oh, absolutely.
And Reggie, go ahead.
It's amazing. Bob Zuck, who Reggie mentioned, signed Darrell Evans too. Darrell originally signed with Kansas City Athletics, and Bob Zuck was a scout that signed him.
And he mentioned all these other greats, right? McCovey, Willie Davis, Stargell, and for Reggie to be a part of that group as a young kid. Obviously, many of these names, the Hank Aaron's and the Willie Mays, were a part of baseball folklore, even back in those days. Reggie, we were talking a little bit about, how playing two sports, especially at the collegiate level, kind of helps with your athleticism. You learn certain things in baseball that can apply to football, your patience, your burst that you would have, just being able to go at the right speed at the right time. And then obviously the power and everything from a football perspective helps you at the plate. One thing I noticed, Reggie, and I'm not saying this to be anything other than an admirer, is very early in your career, you did not have a baseball body. You had a football body, big shoulders, small waist, 2-3% body fat. That percentage, to me, the body mass aspect of the strength, the pull-ups that you were doing when you were a little kid, I think that enhanced what I would say your natural ability, because you were stronger than most of these other guys. And your swing versus not Rick Mondays, but other guys, you can hit the ball a little bit farther. You can hit the ball off the wall a lot more easy than some of these other guys.
Yeah, that's true. I remember as a young player too, that we used to, when we went to Fresno, we saw Bobby Bonds. And Bobby Bonds could do everything that his son could do, or everything that Mays could do.
Right.
He kind of fell off the rails there toward the end. But I always will remember it. And there's a few other guys. When we went to play Albuquerque, they had Garvey, Say,
Lopes, Russell, right?
Lopes.
Buckner.
Yeah, they were all down there in Albuquerque. And we beat them 3 or 4 straight in the playoffs in the Southern League against their AA league. But it was always a great experience for me to play against the Dodgers. Mainly, I really followed the Dodgers because of Jackie. And then my favorite player was Duke Snider. But the Dodgers have always been a special team for me because the O'Malleys took the chance to bring the first black player in the game.
Well, the question for New Yorkers, and you were born in Philadelphia, so not that far away, was Willie, Mickey, or Duke? And you just said Duke is the guy for you, right?
Well, I like Duke Snider because he was lefty. You didn't so much pull for the Yankees because they beat everybody anyway. So the underdog was the Dodgers. And I was a Dodger fan really because of Duke Snider, but then I gravitated toward Willie Mays because of the basket catch. And, Willie was a spectacular player. Whenever we played against the Giants in spring training, I always loved to go play the game because I could see Mays play. And so I would make sure I was traveling to the game to play the Giants so I could see Willie play, so I could see him warm up and play catch.
Yes. They say you're never supposed to meet your heroes, right? But getting a chance to do that doesn't count when you get to meet Willie Mays, right?
When I met Willie Mays, he drove up on the outfield in a Dodge because Chrysler Dodge was his sponsor.
Okay.
And he got out of the car. He was already dressed, and he just started playing catch. And then he came over to the dugout with to see in front of the A's dugout, and I was sitting in there next to Bando, and Willie said, "Where's Reggie Jackson? Who's this Reggie Jackson kid? I need to see this. I need to see Reggie Jackson."
Just like him.
Yeah, and he Bando. I was sitting next to Sal, and Sal just grabbed me and just threw me, just pushed me out. He said, "There he is," and I said hello and we talked a little bit, and I was really excited, So, but and then Bando said, Reggie, do your Willie imitation because I could run like Willie. He had that pigeon-toed run and kind of a little quick step, and I went down the foul line so he wouldn't be able to grab me. And so, and I kind of did my little Willie Mays imitation, and he laughed, So it was pretty cool.
Hey, Reggie, I've got a question for you. When you were like at Arizona State and going through all that, did you ever in your wildest dreams think there'd be a Reggie bar? Did you ever think?
No, you don't. You don't think about that kind of stuff, Bob. You wanna get in the league and make it,
Yeah.
and stay. Because every time you take a step, so you go to high school to college, and you get to college and you see you're going to play football, you're going to play baseball, and you look around and you see Curly Colton, and you're like, damn,
Yeah.
6'1", 290, and
Yeah.
this dude is 18. And so I said to him, we were walking down the hall, I said, so Curly, what's your real name? And he said, my real name is Curly. And I went, oh, okay. Okay, buddy. But some of the guys that you met from the different parts of the country, they were so fast. There were guys that ran 4.2 40s, 4.3 40. Big guys from Pennsylvania and Michigan, 6'6", 290, 6'3", 260, and 18. You just look around at guys that were 6'5" and 205, wide receiver from Southern California or somebody from Pascagoula, Mississippi. My roommate was a guy named Brady Walker, 6'4", 215, wide receiver, 18 years old, and run like the wind. And they're just guys that were around like that. And so you had to make it to that step where you're going to be somebody. You look around the room and you say, well, I'm better than him. I am better than him. I'm better than him. I don't want to get in front of that guy. He might kick the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, and then in baseball, it wasn't as hard for me. And I'm not saying it was hard in football, because in football I played both ways, and it wasn't abnormal. A lot of guys played when you got off deep. When you kicked the ball, you just from offense, you just got to your defensive spot. The guy that was a defensive tackle was an offensive guard. The center was a linebacker.
Yep.
And that's just how it was. You just played the whole game. It wasn't a big deal. And that was it. You played both ways. You played 48 minutes.
And then you see some of these guys that are throwing 96 to you every day, and you're able to hit it. Reggie, I do want to ask you one question, if you don't mind. I'm not going to go off the path, but just obviously your vision has to be elite, immaculate. Ted Williams was 2010. What was it about your vision? Because I know you wore glasses, especially later on in your career. Once you started going to the World Series with the A's, you wore glasses. And today, the goggles that the guys wear are a little bit different, but you just wore aviator glasses for your vision. How did that help you, or did that was it protective as much, or was it something that you really needed? And how did that fine tune for your hitting, especially to make it easier for you?
I went to a guy in Arizona because I was swinging and missing a lot.
Okay.
And, I learned to recognize 6, 8, 9-digit numbers in tenths of a second. And, he would flash numbers in front of me. And he would flash numbers in front of me. And I would, do my best to pick them up. And
you'd memorize them and then be able to see them, detect them in the split second, right?
That's right. Yeah. That's okay. Right. And then you started out with license plates, 7-digit night license plates. He'd flash them on the screen. And then from there, you get up to 6, 7, 8, 9 digits, 7, 8, 9 digits. And then, recite those for quickness of recognition. So that's the way I help my eyes. I did feel that I needed night glasses at night. And right now, I was having a couple of people talk to me last night. We were having dinner, and I was looking at the menu, and the guy said to me, Reggie, you don't wear glasses. I've noticed that. He said, what do you use your glasses for? He said, I don't know anybody your age. You're almost 80, and you don't wear glasses. I said, well, I don't need glasses. I can see, but I like to have them at night because I don't see as well at night. And so it was that same way in baseball. I didn't follow the ball that well at night. I needed to help me see at night. But in Oakland, the lights I thought were always too high. They were put in too high in
Yeah.
that stadium, is what I thought. But anyway, I did take get glasses for clarity.
Well, speaking of Oakland, if you don't mind, let's go there a little bit. When Kansas City / Oakland, they draft you, they're not a great club, but boy, did they have some talent coming up. I have to tease with you a little bit, Reggie. The uniforms, come on, the green and the yellow only, the canary and the bananas and all that kind of stuff. But you're in an organization that very soon is going to be world class. I've got a picture of you and Joe DiMaggio early in your career. But what was it like for you? I mean, very little time in the minors. Next thing you know, you're playing in the big leagues and you're excelling. And you're with a bunch of other guys. You mentioned Sal Bando, guys that would eventually get to Oakland. You're in a brand new stadium. You've got an owner that's waving banners and wants to be a part of the action. Early on in Oakland, what was that like for you?
You know, the only thing you focused on was doing well, and trying to stay in the big leagues, try to stay competitive, get better all the time. And so I guess the aura of being a big leaguer is part of it, but you want to do well and get better, and that's really what it's all about. Um, how am I going to get better every day and live up to my potential? I always knew I could hit 30 home runs or 40 and drive in 100. I never really was satisfied with my batting average, and I had a few years where I was 270, 290 hitter, but I really always thought I should have been a better hitter. Um, and I think it was because of my focus wasn't as good, if I look back on it. But I'm grateful for my career and thankful for my production and the great teams I was with, the great players that I played with. I played with Fingers, Catfish Hunter, the two Hall of Famers, Bert Campaneris, and near miss Hall of Famer Joe Rudy, near miss Hall of Famer Kenny Holtzman, pitched for 7, 8 years like a Hall of Famer. Vida Blue pitched for 10 years like a Hall of Famer.
Yes.
So there was some great talent, great players, great people that played on that team and in that organization. And as tough as Charlie Finley was, and really he was, in the league and couldn't afford some of the spending that the Yankees and the other teams, the Dodgers, could afford because you didn't have the crowds. And so that really was the demise for the Oakland franchise.
Well, you mentioned all of those guys. You mentioned Garvey Lopes, Say, Russell, Buckner, Yeager, Ferguson, guys that are a part of that Dodger organization that, oddly enough, are growing and maturing at just about the same rate that you are with Bando, Campaneris, Gene Tennis. You mentioned Joe Rudy. You've got an amazing pitching staff with Catfish and Holtzman and obviously Vida Blue and Raleigh Fingers. You mentioned all of those guys.
How about Daryl Knowles? Daryl Knowles pitched at all 4 World Series games.
Absolutely. I mean, what a great lineup.
He pitched in all 7 in 1972.
Yeah. What else have you done for me, Daryl? I mean, are you kidding me? And an important part of that. And then you beat the Big Red Machine, of course, that first year. You got the Mets the second year. You take the Dodgers the third year. No one's done that, right? Except for the Yankees back in the day. But it just an amazing run, and you're a part of it. All-star appearances. Well, let's talk about that all-star. I know you were interviewed a couple of times, and you hit the ball on the roof. And really, I think baseball started to change where the younger group that was coming in was showing up. Yes, you had Harmon Killebrew and Mays and Aaron and all that, but there's this young kid named Jackson. There's a young catcher named Fossey. There's other young players that are just getting their wings underneath them, and they're excelling too. Talk a little bit about that in terms of your maturity level and your understanding of the game and how things were slowing down to the point where you were getting it and you were excelling at the highest level.
Well, I really think it was just the natural evolution of the game. So you had Ty Cobb and Honus Wagner and Cy Young and Bob Feller and those guys, and then now all of a sudden, and then you had Mays and Gibson and Marichal and Koufax and Newcomb and Drysdale, Spahn and those guys that had their era, Clemente, etc. And then you went to Rose and Bench and Jackson and Nolan Ryan and that era of guys that were very special. Jack Morris and Rod Carew and Kirby Puckett and George Brett and Mike Schmidt. And it was just a natural evolution of great players. And I think the same thing, goes on today with the judges and God dang on it. I've got a break because the guy that's coming to fix my refrigerator for 3 weeks is at the door and I got to meet him.
Okay, we understand.
Can you take a break?
Sure.
Yeah. How much time do you need? Well, Bob and I will talk, and if you can come back in a couple minutes.
Probably 5 or 7, 8 minutes or something.
Okay, we understand.
All right. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Oh, this is great stuff hearing this stuff, Great stuff.
Yeah, he mentioned some of the constants of the game, even though the time passes, the different eras of players. I was going to say throw Steve Carlton in there too. Why don't you? There's no one that he mentioned that isn't a pivotal part of the game, right, Bob?
100%. The passage of baseball. That is 100% correct. It's as time goes on, but I got one thing I want to ask him about is the funniest story I ever heard when he hit the 5 homers in the World Series. He bought a new Rolls Royce and drove it 100 miles an hour from New York to California. And I heard he was pulled over about 8 times and all they did was want his autograph. They didn't write him up. I got to ask him. Yeah. I wonder if that's really true. I've heard that story for years. I want to ask him if that's really true.
Well, I found this picture, Bob, of him. This is the Doc Ellis pitch that he hits out at Tiger Stadium in the 71 All-Star game. And then Kurt Gowdy is interviewing him. That's probably immediately after.
Kurt Gowdy there?
Yeah, that's Kurt.
His hair was white? Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Bob, would you consider that in some small way to be a partial shot heard around the world for baseball? So good for the game.
Harper, that home run is as memorable as any of his World Series home runs because it was an all-star game, and that ball, it's one of those things like I've always told you where you can shut your eyes. I watch that. It'll be in my head as long as I'm breathing. That shot. Because that ball was going like this when it hit the light standards. So it wasn't on the way down. I never saw a ball hit that. And it took it about 2 seconds to hit the light standards.
It was still on its way up, it appears, right? And the thing about Tiger Stadium, for those that may not know, the second upper deck was directly above the first deck. So you could hit a shot that would go maybe halfway up the first deck in terms of the length of the ball and how far it goes from home plate. But it lands in the second deck because the second deck is in the way. And it's more exciting. He hit it in the upper deck, right? That means more than just hitting it in the first level. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. But the way that he hit that ball at a time where you had Harmon Killebrew and Hank and Willie, Frank Howard. I bet you there was a young Dave Kingman playing for the Cubs back in those days that just hit monster shots. I'm not sure if Schmidt was. I thought Mike was a rookie in '72, but he had that power to be able to do that. I mean, that's Mark McGuire type stuff from nowadays. But Reggie did it, and it was so ho hum, matter of fact. But nobody knew who he was prior to that in the same way that they would learn about him. And obviously, with those 3 World Series in a row and his contribution to the A's and their 3 championships, it was a sign of things to come, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was looking, I was kind of reviewing his record. He won home run titles 4, and he won 2 with Oakland, 1 with the Yankees, and 1 with the Angels. I mean, how about that? He led the majors in home runs twice with Oakland, once with the Yankees, and once with the Angels, among the 563 homers and the 10 home runs in the World Series and all the other stuff. I mean, just unbelievable.
Yeah, and in terms of the awards and everything, he was a Silver Slugger on multiple occasions. Just when he comes back, there's 1,000 more questions that we're going to ask. And for those of you that are just tuning in, this is 100 Yards of Football, the sports page with Bob Case. And Bob's special guest today is Reggie Jackson, the one and only. Reggie has a small errand that he needs to run, and he'll be back with us in just a moment because there's a refrigerator that needs to get fixed. And how many of us have had instances where you got life, right? Things happen, he did get mad at his phone until he realized that, this is the guy that I've been waiting for 3 weeks. So that's a good thing. Bob, you mentioned when you first met Reggie, probably 67, 8, 9, somewhere in that range.
It was like his second, third year, but he was strong and young, and I was amazed he was not. You know how most guys when they get in the big leagues, they're kind of like, do I belong here? Or he acted like he belonged here from the first time I ever saw him. He had that, what I call an edge around him. Like it's a certain kind of and he had that his whole career, which is, I think, part of the reason he had. Now you listen to him today, he's like a different person. He's, quiet and, but that edge is what made him great as a player, I believe, it was just, it was really fun to watch him, and as I've always told you, I always have gravitated towards characters, and he was definitely a character and definitely somebody that danced to his own music, which I thought was, Reggie was Reggie. He wasn't trying to, even though he had all these guys he looked up to, he was his own man, which I really, and the respect, I know all these old players and everything, the respect I hear from him, like Darrell Evans said, he said, I never saw him not run out a ground ball. I never saw him. Darrell played 21 years like Reggie. He said, but the guy was among his peers, was like amazingly respected and loved, which is really interesting to hear from.
I've used the expression before, Bob, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but it may come into play here. I don't always know what it is, but if you've got it, whatever it is, if you've got it, and I think that Reggie had
Absolutely.
it, and I think other people recognize that he had it. There's a certain, again, a question I will ask him a little bit later, but I'll save it from this portion of the show. But if Wayne Gretzky were skating on ice and had a puck and a stick and a net somewhere, I think any other hockey player in the world would kind of stop what they were doing and watch this guy skate. I think even Gordie Howe would have to just sit and watch for a little bit. And when Reggie was at the plate, I think even if he were alive, Babe Ruth or Ted Williams would just take a moment and say, what has this guy got? Different swing than I have, but he also has a different result than I get. Yeah, Ted's going to hit 400, but Ted's not going to hit a ball 535. But Ted had all kinds of chances, didn't he, to hit the roof of Tiger Stadium? How many times did Ted Williams hit the roof?
You were talking about his muscle mass. I want you to see this picture.
Yeah.
That's Reggie with the Angels. Look at the body.
Yeah. And then he's 35 or 40 years old in that picture.
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, the guy was built like a football player, like you said,
Yeah. I will follow up with another question that I have regarding his physique when he comes back. But he always, later on in his career, once the World Series victories in Oakland started taking place, I noticed Reggie always wore sleeves that went all the way down to his wrists, and he wore wristbands. He used sweatbands. He always covered his arms up.
Yeah.
He didn't need to. There's a couple pictures that I found that are absolutely stunning in terms of this guy's. He's not the tallest guy you're ever going to see, right? He's 5'10", right? But in terms of his body mass, his forearm strength and size, Hank had tremendous forearm strength. Every pitcher knew that all Hank had to do is just kind of flick his wrists, and the power that he had in his forearms and his shoulders was enough to elevate most balls to go 382 feet in a 380-foot wall. He could do that. And I think Reggie had that same type of strength, only probably a little bit more. Small waist, incredibly powerful, and a tremendous swing. I imagine you've seen it live, knowing that this guy swings harder, more velocity, and generates more speed and power with this bat than most guys are capable of doing.
Well, Harper, I'll tell you another thing. A lot of home runs, as you've seen, a lot of players hit home runs, and they're high arcing home runs, that seem to be in the air a long time. Most of Reggie's home runs were bang, you know what I mean? As I recall, they weren't these high arcing home runs. They were just like line shots.
The 3 home run World Series game, that was the 77 series, if I'm not mistaken. And he hits off Bert Hooton, Elias Sosa, and then Charlie Huff, who came in relief. And that was the third of the 3 home runs that he hit. The second one, I was reading somewhere where a reporter had said, as soon as the ball hit the bat, you knew it was gone.
Yeah, that's right.
The sound that it made, the exit velo, which wasn't a statistic back in 1977. No one was talking about stuff like that. They were saying, hey, that ball really jumped off the bat, but there was not much more in terms of a description of it. And there was you knew it in your knower that that ball was going to end up halfway up the right field bleachers, but it got there a second and a half quicker than the first home run, which was more of an arcing pop fly type thing. This one was a ball that was going to roll 700 feet if it landed on a flat surface.
100%.
And he had the power to do that, and he had it all through his career. I know there were a couple of times he had injuries. Do you remember if Reggie had many, visits on the injured or the disabled list?
I really don't. He missed one of the World Series in Oakland. He was hurt, and I don't really remember him a guy on the DL a lot. Not at all.
The 73 series, if I'm not mistaken, against the Mets in the Tiger Championship Series, the ALCS. I think he scored the winning run in the game that got them to the World Series. And during the rounding the third base or something like that, he pulled his hamstring pretty badly, and that's why he had to miss the series. It was a 2-week injury, and oddly enough, the series lasted about 9 or 10, 11 days. So
good recall, Harper. Good recall.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you never know. You never know what I'm going to remember.
Those Oakland teams he played on, those were, because they were in Oakland, they don't get the same as if they were the Yankees or the Dodgers, but those are some great, great teams. You know what I mean? They were really, you hear about the Big Red Machine, those Oakland teams were, if not equally as good, if not better,
Well, they beat them.
Better pitching than the Big Red.
They beat the Big Red Machine.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. The Yankees lost to the Reds in 76. Remember, the Reds had won the 75 series. They beat the Red Sox.
Yeah.
And then the 76 series, they swept the Yankees. But oddly enough, that was the year that Reggie was in Baltimore.
Right.
And he had been traded from the A's. And the breakup of the organization after Catfish left, he mentioned Sal Bando as a great teammate. Raleigh Fingers. Before you know it, Joe Rudy was gone. Only Vida Blue really stayed. But Reggie was a part of a trade that goes to Baltimore. And so he ends up that 1 year with the Orioles, and they can't sign him to a long-term deal. They just chose not to. And so he declared for free agency, and what a difference that made in his career and in his life, obviously. He makes 5 times as much money going to the Yankees And how did that turn out for you? We'll talk to him about that when he comes back. But
Harper, think about this. Reggie played 10 years with the A's. He played 5 years with the Yankees, 5 years with the Angels, and 1 year in Baltimore, 21 years. But Reggie, to me, will always be a Yankee. You know what I mean? Even though he had all that fame and World Series in Oakland, he's a Yankee, you know? And he told me one day, he said, "Oh, I'm just a borderline Hall of Famer." I said, "Reggie, you're out of your mind. You're not a borderline Hall of Famer. You're a rock star." I said, to me, with the Yankees, it's Ruth, Mantle, and Reggie. 3 guys with 500 home runs. And what the 5 years what Reggie did, he could have been there 20 years in New York, you know. Candy bars named after him, Mr. October, blah, 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 all that stuff. So I put him in there. And you notice I didn't say Derek Jeter and these other guys because they're not. Reggie, those home run guys are like special to me, you know, from Babe Ruth to Mickey Mantle to Reggie Jackson. That's just how I view it.
Bob, you were younger. I was probably 13 or 14 during the first World Series with the Yankees. And it was a special time in New York because of Studio 54.
Yep.
Disco was coming around. The Bronx Zoo kind of depicted the recipe of all these different things that were happening in that part of the country at that time. And the Yankees had not won in a decade and a half, almost 2 decades. And Steinbrenner brings in all-stars from other teams and assembles a band that is got a bass player from one of the best bands in the world and the best guitarist and the best drummer. And they assemble and they're forced to become friends in a way that is unusual from a business perspective, but it worked. When did Steinbrenner buy the team? 74, 75? In 76, they were in the World Series. 77, they win it. 78, they win it. They were in it again in 81. So that blueprint of, hey, I paid a lot for the club. I'm going to spend a lot on it. And your ticket prices are going to go up, but the results are going to be pretty good as well. What do you think?
No, absolutely. I mean, it's like,
well, being a part of that and the change in the game of baseball from a financial aspect. And Reggie, Catfish was really the first here in, for you in the Los Angeles area. Andy Messerschmidt was one of those first guys to come over from another organization and play elsewhere and move his career up, I would think.
100%.
Free agency, of course, and Curt Flood was a tremendous part of that.
Absolutely. Well, he was the first. Without Curt Flood, I mean, every player today should be so grateful because he actually sacrificed his career, you know. What a good guy Curt was. Did you ever meet him?
No, never had the privilege. No, absolutely not. What a shame.
What a sweetheart of a guy.
And a sacrificial lamb in so many, from a business perspective, right? I mean, because as soon as that was established and the rule was changed and the courts mandated that the league allow for this type of business practice where players were not restricted any longer, they could jump teams if they wanted to. If you got a contract with the Oakland A's, honor that contract. And when it's over and they establish over 5 years, you could go somewhere else. You could go to Houston, or you could go to Kansas City. You could go to Los Angeles or Boston or Philadelphia if you want to. And that just seems really silly how the owners tried to hold on to that for as long as they could. I get it. Don't get me wrong. I get it. But, you know, the fact that you restrict a guy from being able to exercise his constitutional rights, it doesn't make sense.
100%.
And there we have it. All right. Well, Bob, we're still waiting just for the folks that are tuning in. We appreciate you being a part of the sports page. Our guest today is Reggie Jackson. And as you may notice, Reggie's not with us right at the moment. He's taken a few moments. He has a house guest that he has to get some work done. And he will be back with us shortly. But he does know that we're sitting here. And guess who joins us right on cue? How about that?
Yeah.
Hey, Reggie, I got one question for you. I want to know if it's true or not. It's one of the. If it's true, it's one of the funniest things I ever heard. I heard after your big 5 home run World Series that you bought a brand new Rolls Royce, and I heard you drove it from New York to California like 100 miles an hour. And I heard you were pulled over in 4 or 5 different states by police, and all they did was ask you for your autograph. Is that true?
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. I had went down to a place where I was hanging out all year, and I'm gonna have to leave you guys after this story. Um, I went down to this place where I hung out really most of the year because he was a car person and he sold exotics. I bought a couple Rollses from him. I bought a Ferrari from him. Back in those days. And the day I hit the 3 homers, I had already bought 2 Rolls Royces from the guy, and a Ferrari. And the day after I hit the 3 homers, I went into the store, and he had a brand new Corniche convertible, silver over blue, Yankee colors, and with blue interior, and it was $64,250. And this guy is Michael Shudroff was his name. And you got to have this car. This is the car for you. Forget about it. You're gonna make a lot of money. You're gonna make $2 million this winter with all the autographs and the dinners you're gonna go to, the awards you're gonna win. You got to have this car. I'm not gonna sell this car to anybody. It's got to be your name on it. So I was there for lunch, and then by the end of the day, around 4:00, 4:30, I had my attorney wire the money over to the guy, and I went back home, and got a Samsonite suitcase, and I went to a Radio Shack, and I got a CB radio, a radio that you stuck on the back of the trunk. The trunk was aluminum, and most of the body was aluminum, but the little plate between the back window and the trunk was metal, and you could get a metal antenna and magnetic, and it would I would have an antenna for the rolls, and then I ran the wire through the back trunk, through the back seat, and put the antenna up there. And I drove it across country. I went and packed a suitcase, a couple pair of jeans, and a couple sweatshirts, and some tennies, and drove it to California. And I got stopped the first time in Ohio. And Reggie Jackson, somebody told me that you was on the highway. And I looked at the dude, and I went like, damn, I must be in the South. And I said, where are you from? I'm in the... I said, where am I? I said, aren't I in Ohio? He said, you in Ohio. And I said, uh-oh, I need to be careful, man. I need to be careful with this guy. Yeah. And he said, well, I just stopped to meet you because the truckers are talking about you on the road. And I wanted to shake your hand. He said, I'm not going to give you a ticket. That wouldn't make sense. He said, if you just shake my hand, I'll be all right. And then the next time I got stopped was in Missouri. And this guy stopped me. I was doing 100, and pulled me over and said, I ain't going to give you a ticket, but I wanted to call my mother because she's a Yankee fan. And if you call her and talk to her, I'll let you go. And so I called to spend about 20 minutes, talking with him and shooting the breeze. And then I got back on the highway, and he told me, he said, you don't have to worry about nothing from here because the next state is Oklahoma. And then after that, you're gonna get to Kansas, and then you're gonna get Oklahoma, and then they don't have no speed limit in Colorado and Nevada. You need to be careful when you get back home to California, though. And from there on, there was no speed limit.
Wow.
Yeah, and but I got stopped a couple of times, and it was always a good time. with the people. But I got to go and watch my help my refrigerator guy, man. I got a Sub-Zero. It's been on the blink for about a month, but he's gonna fix it for me.
I know that feeling. Reggie, thank you
it,
so much for being on. If you wouldn't mind, could we get you back on some other time to talk a little bit about your A's and Yankees?
We'll catch up a little bit.
That'd be great. I know that Sub-Zero, it's $100 just to look at it, right? So you got to be careful.
Yeah, well, it's either pay $2,500 to fix it or $7,000 for a new one.
Yeah. Well, negotiate that. Do some handshaking, and hopefully,
yeah.
Bob, this is the first time I've ever heard that there is a Rolls Royce a Corniche out there somewhere with navy blue and silver that's got a CB antenna on the back of it. That's
Reggie, let me just ask you this: among your 100 cars, do you still have that Rolls Royce?
Yes.
You still have it?
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
What a great story that is.
Yeah, and it's brand new. It's brand new.
That story was my favorite story today. Thank you, Reggie. That was great.
All right.
I sure hope that Radio Shack CB still works. Okay. Thank you so much for being with us, Reggie Jackson, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, baseball legend, has some things going on. We will reschedule and be able to continue on some other occasion.
And a great guy on top of all that.
Oh, absolutely. And a great storyteller. So we want to appreciate everybody for being a part of the show. We want to thank you for watching the Sports Page with Bob Case. I'm Harper LaBelle, saying that it's been a pleasure and an honor to be a part of 100 Yards of Football. In the meanwhile, we're going to wish everybody